My name is Anna Calloway and I am 32 years old. On the night of my parents' 30th wedding anniversary in a room full of 120 people, family, friends, colleagues, neighbors, my mother took the microphone, looked directly at me and said 7 words that I will carry for the rest of my life. "We just wish you were more like Dominic." She said it laughing. Like it was a toast. Like it was a compliment to my brother and a gentle nudge to me, the kind of thing families say to each other in public that everyone understands is just affectionate teasing. The room laughed. My father laughed. Dominic smiled into his champagne glass. I sat at my assigned table. Not the family table. I want you to note that, not the table where my brother sat with my parents, but a different table further back, the one with the distant cousins and my parents' work colleagues who didn't know any of us well enough to notice what had just happened, and I felt something go quiet inside me. Not loud. Not explosive. Not the kind of breaking that announces itself. The quiet kind. The kind that has been a long time coming. I excused myself from the table. I walked to the coat check. I collected my coat and my bag. I walked out of the venue into the cold November air. I did not go back. That was 3 years ago. What happened in those 3 years? What I built, who I became, and the evening 6 months ago when my parents finally understood the full weight of what they'd lost. That's the story I'm going to tell you. But first I need to take you back to the beginning. Because the anniversary party was not the beginning. It was just the night I finally believed what I'd always known. Please like and subscribe before I go any further. But only if this is already sitting somewhere in your chest. Drop your location in the comments and tell me what time it is where you are. I want to know you're with me. Let me start at the beginning. My brother Dominic is 3 years older than me and has been the organizing principle of my family's life for as long as I can remember. I want to be careful about how I say this because I've had years to think about it, and what I've landed on is this. Dominic is not a bad person. He is not calculating or cruel or even particularly aware of the dynamic that has existed in our family his entire life. He simply occupied the space that was given to him, and what was given to him was everything, and he accepted it the way people accept things that have always been true, without examining whether they should be. My parents, Robert and Catherine Calloway, are not monsters either. I want to be clear about that too. They are people who loved their children and showed it in a way that was comprehensively, systematically unequal, and who would, if asked, have been genuinely confused by the suggestion that this was a problem. They just loved Dominic the louder way. The way that buys the better birthday cake and shows up to every game and talks about him at dinner parties. The way that mentions his name with a particular warm pride that has its own sound, distinguishable from the sound they used when they mentioned mine. I was loved the quieter way. The assumed way. The way that believes the steady, capable one doesn't need as much tending and therefore receives less. I was 7 years old when I understood the difference. Dominic had a baseball game that fell on the same Saturday as my first piano recital. My music teacher, Mrs. Park, had been preparing us for months. I had practiced every day, sometimes twice a day, with the specific dedication of a child who wants badly to do something well. My parents went to the baseball game. My Aunt Rosa came to the recital. She sat in the front row and recorded the whole thing on a camcorder she'd borrowed from a neighbor. She bought me flowers afterward. Carnations, pink and white, the first flowers anyone had ever bought me. I still have a photograph of that day. Me in my recital dress with the carnations, Aunt Rosa's arm around me, both of us smiling. My parents weren't in that photograph. When I showed them the video that evening, they watched it with the slightly distracted attention of people completing an obligation. My mother said, "Very nice, sweetheart." My father ruffled my hair. Then my mother asked Dominic how he felt about hitting that double in the 4th inning. I put my carnations in a glass of water and went to bed. That was the first time. Over the next 25 years there were many more. My high school valedictorian speech. My parents arrived late because Dominic's car had broken down and they'd waited with him for the tow truck. They missed the speech entirely. They saw me receive the award. My college acceptance. I got into my first choice school on a partial academic scholarship. My parents took us all out to dinner to celebrate. Halfway through the meal, the conversation shifted to Dominic's job applications and stayed there. My graduate school graduation. I completed a master's degree in urban planning at 26, the first person in our family to hold a graduate degree. My parents came to the ceremony. In the family photo taken afterward, my mother is looking at Dominic, who is standing beside her, rather than at the camera. I have looked at that photograph many times over the years. She is literally looking away from me on the day I graduated. I don't think she noticed. That's the part that took the longest to make peace with. She didn't notice. I want to tell you who I was before that anniversary party because I think it matters. I was not a sad person. I want to be clear about that. I had built a life I was genuinely proud of. After my master's degree, I'd gone to work for a city planning consultancy, the kind of firm that works with municipalities on urban development. Zoning, infrastructure, community spaces, the invisible architecture that determines how cities function. I was good at it. I had a particular talent for seeing what a space could be rather than just what it was, for understanding how the decisions made in planning offices translated into real experiences in real neighborhoods. By 30, I was a senior consultant. I had a small team. I had clients who called me by name when they had problems and trusted my judgment enough to act on it. I had an apartment I'd designed myself. Small, in a good neighborhood, full of books and good light in the particular order that comes from living alone with intention. I had friends. Not many. I'd never been someone who collected relationships casually, but good ones. My friend Petra, who I'd known since college and who had the quality of seeing through things quickly and loving you anyway. My colleague James, who was the first person at work who'd treated me as an equal rather than something to be managed. And I had Aunt Rosa. Rosa Calloway, my father's younger sister, had been the constant of my life in a way that I'd understood even as a child and come to depend on more as I grew older. She was 62 now, sharp and warm and direct in the way that some people are when they've spent a lifetime refusing to soften their edges for other people's comfort. She came to everything. The recital, the graduation, the work promotions. She called on my birthday every year first thing in the morning before anyone else. She had a way of asking how are you actually doing that was different from the way most people asked, that carried the implication that she was prepared for a real answer and would sit with it. She knew about the dynamic in my family. We talked about it over the years, carefully, the way you talk about things that involve people you both love. She never demonized my parents. But she saw clearly and she let me know she saw, and there is no small thing about being seen. I was 31 years old the night of the anniversary party. I was by any measure doing well. I was also, if I'm being honest, still waiting. Still carrying, somewhere underneath the accomplished life I'd built, the faint persistent hope that someday the balance would shift. That my parents would look at what I'd built and feel the specific pride they'd always directed at Dominic. That some occasion would arrive that was mine, unambiguously mine, and they would show up for it the way they'd always shown up for him. The anniversary party was supposed to be that night. It was not that night. My parents' 30th anniversary was in November. They'd been planning the celebration for months. A proper party, a venue, a sit-down dinner for 120 guests. The kind of event that required a seating chart and a caterer and someone to organize the speeches. I was asked to organize the speeches. Not Dominic. Me. Because I was good at that kind of thing, at managing details and coordinating people and making sure the moving parts arrived at the right time. My parents knew this about me and called on it regularly, the way you call on reliable infrastructure. Without fanfare, without particular gratitude, just with the confidence of people who know a thing will be done well. I spent 3 weeks on the speeches. I contacted extended family members, gathered anecdotes, wrote introductions, prepared a running order. I organized the audiovisual for the photograph slideshow. I coordinated with the venue on the room setup and the timing of the courses. I also wrote something of my own. A short speech, 5 minutes, about what it meant to have parents who'd built something lasting together. I wrote it carefully, honestly, the way I tried to do most things. I included specific memories. I tried to say true things. I arrived at the venue an hour early to do a final check. Everything was in order. The room looked beautiful. The tables were set, the flowers arranged, the photograph slideshow cued. The speeches were timed and ready. I'd prepared a program and placed one at every seat. Dominic arrived 20 minutes before guests were due, having contributed, to my knowledge, the purchase of a card. My parents arrived to a room that was ready because I'd made it ready. My mother hugged Dominic first. The dinner was lovely, genuinely. The food was good, the room was warm, the guests were in the kind of good spirits that a well-organized party produces. I watched it all from my table, not the family table I'll remind you but the one further back, and felt the satisfaction of work done well alongside the familiar low-grade ache of its being work that nobody would specifically attribute to me. The speeches began after the main course. I had organized 6 of them. Relatives, old friends, a colleague of my father's. They were warm, funny, well-received. The room was in exactly the mood I'd planned for. sentimental, a little loose with wine, ready for the final toast. My mother stood up to speak. She was beautiful that night, I'll say that. She'd had her hair done and was wearing the kind of dress that shows a woman knows the occasion matters. She looked happy in the way that people look when they are genuinely celebrating something real. She talked about 30 years. About the early days of her marriage, about raising her children, about the life she and my father had built together. It was warm and well delivered, and I found myself, despite everything, moved by it. And then, "Hi, children," she said, looking first at Dominic, then at me. Dominic, who has always made us so proud. Dominic smiled. The room smiled. "And our Anna." She paused. Cocked her head slightly, the way she did when she thought she was being playful. "We just wish you were more like Dominic." She said it with a laugh. The room laughed. 120 people laughed. My father laughed. Dominic smiled into his champagne glass. I sat completely still. My mother had moved on already. "A toast to 30 more years," she said, glasses raised. But I was not in the room anymore. I was somewhere else, somewhere very quiet, where I was 9 years old with carnations in a glass of water and 7 years old listening to a video of my piano recital play for parents who'd watched it with the slightly distracted attention of obligation, and 26 years old in a graduation photograph where my mother was looking at my brother. "We just wish you were more like Dominic." In front of 120 people. Laughing. I waited until the toast was finished. Until the clink of glasses and the applause had settled. Then I excused myself from my table. I walked to the coat check. I collected my coat. I left. I need to stop here for a moment. Because if you've ever been reduced to a punchline at an event you organized, at a table you weren't important enough to sit at, in front of people who laughed because they didn't know better, I see you. Drop a word in the comments. Anything. Just let me know you're there. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is the moment. Because what I built in the 3 years after I walked out that door is the part of this story that still surprises me when I think about it. Type Anna in the comments if you're still with me. The air outside was cold. November in Connecticut, the kind of cold that is sharp and clarifying, that cuts through the soft blurred edges of a warm room and makes everything exact. I stood on the pavement outside the venue and looked at my phone. 3 texts had come in while I was sitting at my table. One from Petra, "How's the party going?" One from Aunt Rosa, who had been seated at the family table and had seen everything. "Anna, where are you? Come find me." One from James, "Hope you're having a good night. You deserve one." I stood in the cold and read them twice. Then I called a car. While I waited, Rosa came out. She found me on the pavement with my coat on and my bag over my shoulder and my face doing the thing it does when I am not going to cry in front of anyone but am also not far from it. She looked at me for one moment. Then she said, "I know." Just that. Not an explanation, not a defense of my parents, not a suggestion that my mother hadn't meant it that way. Just "I know." "I'm going home," I said. She nodded. "Rosa." I looked at her. "I'm not coming back." She held my gaze for a moment. "Back tonight? Or, I don't know yet," I said. "I just know I'm not going back in there." She stepped forward and held me for a moment, brief and certain, the way she always had. "You call me tomorrow," she said. "Whatever you decide. You call me." "I will." The car arrived. I got in. I watched the venue lights disappear in the rear window. I went home. I didn't sleep that night. Not in the desperate sleepless way of crisis. More in the way of someone who has important thinking to do and needs the dark and the quiet to do it. I sat in my apartment, in the chair by the window where I did my best thinking, and I went through everything. Not just the anniversary party. Everything. The piano recital. The graduation speech. The photograph where my mother was looking away. The dinner table conversations that shifted to Dominic. The phone calls where I shared news and the subject changed. The years of being the capable one, the easy one, the one who didn't need tending and therefore didn't receive it. The years of waiting for the balance to shift. The years of believing that if I was just excellent enough, steady enough, visible enough, eventually they would see me the way they saw him. I sat with all of it. And I asked myself a question I hadn't let myself ask before. What if the balance isn't going to shift? Not because they were bad people. Not because they didn't love me. But because this was the groove the family had worn, and grooves that deep don't change without something more than patience from the person at the bottom of them. What would my life look like if I stopped waiting? By 3 in the morning I had the shape of an answer. I was going to stop. Not dramatically. Not with a declaration or an ultimatum or a confrontation designed to make them understand what they'd done. Those things weren't in my nature, and also, I'd come to understand over years of quiet observation, rarely produced the outcome they were intended to produce. I was simply going to stop making myself available to be diminished. No more organizing events for families who seated me at the back. No more producing excellent work that went unattributed. No more showing up as reliable infrastructure for people who didn't see me as a person, just as a function. I was going to put all of that energy into my own life. And I was going to see what happened when I did. I called Aunt Rosa at 7 a.m. She answered on the first ring. "I've been awake," she said. "Me too. What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking I'm done," I said. Not angry done. Just, I'm finished organizing my life around people who don't see me. I'm done waiting for them to change. Pause. What does that look like practically? I'm going to stop calling. Stop showing up. Stop being available. I paused. I'm not going to send a letter or make a speech. I'm just going to quietly become unavailable. Rosa was quiet for a moment. And if they reach out? Then I'll respond. Civilly. But I'm not going to chase it anymore. Another pause. "Okay," she said. "Okay. Anna." Her voice was gentle. "I've watched you bend yourself into smaller and smaller shapes for 31 years trying to earn something that should have been given freely. If you've decided to stop bending, I'm not going to tell you that's wrong." She paused. "I'm going to tell you that I'm proud of you. And that I'm here. Whatever happens." I held the phone. "Thank you," I said. "Don't thank me," she said. "Just go build something." The 3 years after the anniversary party were the most productive of my life. I want to be specific about this because I think it matters. This isn't a story about someone who fell apart after a painful moment and then recovered. I didn't fall apart. The painful moment was, in a strange and clarifying way, the thing that freed me. When you stop directing a significant portion of your emotional energy toward being seen by people who aren't looking, you discover how much energy you actually have. In the first year, I led my firm's biggest project to date, a comprehensive urban redevelopment plan for a mid-sized city in Ohio that had been dealing with decades of population decline and infrastructure deterioration. It was exactly the kind of work I'd gotten into the field to do. Complex, meaningful, requiring the integration of community input with technical planning and political navigation. We delivered a plan that the city council adopted unanimously. The project got written up in 2 national planning journals. My name was on both articles. In the second year, I was asked to speak at a national urban planning conference. Not as a panel member, as a keynote speaker. I stood at a podium in front of 400 of my professional peers and talked for 45 minutes about how the decisions made in planning offices translate into the lived experiences of the people who inhabit the spaces we design. About the ethics of planning, about whose voices get centered and whose get ignored, about what it means to build something that actually serves the people it's supposed to serve. I got a standing ovation. Afterward, a woman came up to me, a senior planner from a city in California 20 years my senior, someone whose work I'd read in graduate school, and she said, "That was the most honest talk I've heard at one of these in 15 years. I thought about Mrs. Park's carnations. About the front row of a piano recital. About the people who show up." In the third year, I was offered a partnership at my firm. I was 34 years old. The youngest partner in the firm's history. The first woman to hold the position. I called Rosa to tell her. She cried. My parents didn't know. My parents reached out 3 times in the first year. My mother called 2 weeks after the anniversary party. I let it go to voicemail. She said, "Anna, I hope you're well. We missed you at the end of the party. Call us when you can." No acknowledgement of what she'd said. No, I've been thinking about it. Just, "We missed you at the end of the party." I texted back, "All well. Hope the rest of the night was good." She called again in March for my birthday. I answered. We had a conversation that lasted 12 minutes and covered the weather, her garden, and something Dominic was working on. She did not ask about my work. She did not ask how I was actually doing. She said, "Happy birthday, sweetheart," and we said goodbye. My father sent an email in June. Short, carefully worded, the way my father communicated things he wasn't sure how to say out loud. He said he'd been thinking about me. He hoped we'd see each other soon. He said he was proud of everything I'd accomplished. That last line I read several times. I replied, "Thank you, Dad. I'm well. Hope you both are too." 12 words. I did not call. I did not visit. I did not offer myself up as the organizer of the next family event. What surprised me was how little I missed them. Not them specifically, I missed the parents I'd wished they were. The ones who'd been in the front row at Mrs. Park's recital. The ones who'd made it to my graduation speech. The ones who, on the night of their 30th anniversary, might have looked at their daughter and said something that wasn't a comparison. I missed that family. But I had always missed that family. The absence wasn't new. What was new was that I'd stopped pretending it wasn't there. What filled the space was real. Petra, who called every Sunday and asked the actual question and listened to the actual answer. James, who became over those 3 years something closer to family than colleague. The kind of friendship built in the shared trench of hard work and mutual respect. Rosa, always Rosa, who showed up to the conference where I gave the keynote and sat in the 4th row and cried during the standing ovation and said afterward, "Your mother is my most beloved idiot of a sister-in-law, and if she could have seen that she would have understood every single thing she got wrong." A dog named Franklin, a ridiculous golden retriever mix I adopted in year 2 who had no capacity whatsoever for making me feel inadequate and a considerable gift for sitting on my feet when I was trying to work. A life. A full, warm, specifically mine kind of life. Not the one I'd been trying to earn. The one I'd built on my own terms. 6 months before I was made partner, Dominic called me. This was unusual. We had the kind of sibling relationship that operated mostly through our parents as intermediaries. News passed via our mother, the occasional text, no particular closeness. We'd never developed it. The dynamic that had given him everything and me the remainder was not a foundation for genuine closeness. He called on a Tuesday evening. I answered because I was curious. "Hey, Anna." He sounded different from how he usually sounded. Less easy. "Hey. Mom and Dad are worried about you," he said. "You've barely been in touch." "I've responded to every message," I said. "I'm just not initiating." Pause. Why? I considered how to answer this. "Dominic," I said. "Do you remember Mom's toast at the anniversary party?" Silence. What she said to me. In front of everyone. A longer silence. She was just joking around. "I know that's how it read," I said. "I know that's how it was intended. But when someone has been telling you your whole life in ways both small and large, that you're less than someone else, and then they say it out loud in front of 120 people and laugh, it stops being a joke." He was quiet for a moment. "I didn't realize." "I know you didn't," I said. And I meant it. "You were never trying to take anything from me. Things were just given to you and you received them. I understand that." "Anna." "Dominic. I'm not angry at you. I'm genuinely not. I just had to stop participating in a dynamic that was costing me things I couldn't afford to keep losing." I paused. "I'm doing well. Better than I've done in years. This is not a crisis. It's just a boundary." He was quiet for a long time. "She cried," he said finally. "After you left the party. Once she realized you weren't coming back. She cried." I sat with that for a moment. "I hope it meant something to her," I said. "I think it did." "Okay. Anna." His voice was stripped of the easy quality now. Something more genuine underneath. "I think I've been taking up a lot of space in this family without thinking about what that meant for you. I've been thinking about that." I looked out my window. "That's worth something," I said. "If it's real." "It's real." "Then show it," I said. "Not to me. To them. Tell them what you just told me. They'll listen to you in a way they never quite listened to me." Pause. He said. "Take care of yourself, Dominic. You too." I hung up. I sat with the conversation for a while. Then Franklin climbed onto my feet and I went back to work. The partnership announcement came on a Thursday. My firm's managing director called me into his office and told me formally, with the handshake and the specific solemnity that these moments deserve. I accepted with the steadiness I'd learned over years of doing work that mattered and being the kind of person who shows up for it. That evening I went to Rose's house for dinner. We opened a bottle of wine she'd been keeping for a special occasion and sat at her kitchen table and she said, "Tell me everything. From the beginning. I want to hear all of it." So I told her. 2 hours of telling. The project in Ohio, the conference keynote, the partnership offer, the conversation with Dominic. The 3 years of building a life so full that the absence at its center had become, not healed but manageable. Held properly. Given its true size rather than the size I'd spent years trying to minimize or compensate for. Rosa listened the way she always had. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Your parents called me last week, she said. I looked at her. Your mother. She wrapped her hands around her wine glass. She asked me how you were. Really asked, not the surface version. She said Dominic had talked to her. That he'd said some things. She paused. She said she's been thinking about the anniversary party. About what she said. What did you tell her? I told her the truth. Rosa met my eyes. I told her that you were the most accomplished person I knew and that you'd built something extraordinary while she wasn't looking, and that the question of whether she got to be part of it was entirely up to her at this point. I looked at my wine glass. She asked if she could call you, Rosa said. What did you tell her? That you were an adult who could decide that for yourself. She paused. So I'm telling you. She wants to call. Whether you answer is your choice. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I sat with that. Outside, Rosa's garden was dark and quiet. The kitchen was warm. Franklin was asleep on the mat by the door, having charmed Rosa into letting him stay during dinner. I'll think about it, I said. Rosa nodded. That's enough, she said. My mother called on a Sunday morning. I was at my kitchen table with coffee and the newspaper and Franklin at my feet. The morning had the quality of late autumn Sundays, gray and still and good for staying in. I looked at her name on my screen. I answered. Anna. Her voice was careful. Prepared in the way it had been the night she told me not to worry about the empty seats at my graduation speech. But different too. Underneath the preparation, something less certain than usual. Hi, Mom. I've been wanting to call for a while. Pause. I've been trying to find the right words. Okay. Another pause. Longer. I've been thinking about the anniversary party, she said. About what I said. Yes. Rosa said you were made partner at your firm. Yes. She said you gave a keynote speech at a national conference. That people gave you a standing ovation. Yes. A silence. I didn't know, my mother said. I didn't know any of that was happening. No, I said. You didn't. Another silence. The longest one. I'm sorry, she said. Not just for the party. For all the years of not knowing. For not asking. Her voice was stripped of everything practiced now. Just plain and real. I'm sorry I wasn't paying attention. I sat with those words. I'm sorry I wasn't paying attention. I'd waited a long time to hear something true. Thank you, I said. Can we have dinner sometime? Her voice was careful. Hopeful in the way that's painful to hear because it's so careful. Just you and me. Not a family event. Just us. I thought about what Rosa had said. If she wants to be part of it, that's entirely up to her now. Yes, I said. Let's do that. Okay. She exhaled. The kind of exhale that releases something held for a long time. Okay. We stayed on the phone a little longer. Before we hung up, she said, I looked up the conference you spoke at. I found a recording of your talk online. I stilled. I watched it 3 times, she said quietly. Anna, she stopped. Mom. You were extraordinary, she said. I had no idea. I closed my eyes. I've been extraordinary for a long time, I said gently. I just needed someone to be paying attention. A silence. I know, she said. I know that now. We had dinner 6 weeks later. Just the 2 of us at a restaurant I chose on a Tuesday evening in spring. I drove to Connecticut for it. I hadn't been back since the night I'd collected my coat from the venue 3 years earlier. My mother was already there when I arrived. Seated at the table early, which was unlike her. She looked up when she saw me and her face did something complicated that resolved into a smile that was less practiced than the ones I was used to from her. She stood up. I let her hug me. We sat down. We ordered. And then we talked. Not the careful surface talk of the phone calls I'd been navigating for years. Really talked. She asked about my work. Specifically, with real curiosity, the kind that follows up and wants to understand rather than just to have asked. She asked about Petra and James and Rosa. She asked about Franklin, who she'd seen in a photo I'd sent Rosa. She listened when I answered. At some point midway through the meal she said, Can I tell you something? Yes. After you left the party, she said, I didn't understand right away what had happened. I thought you just left early. That something had come up. She paused. And then Dominic came and found me and said, "She's gone because of what you said, Mom." And she stopped. I went back through what I'd said and I didn't want to believe it had been hurtful because I hadn't meant it to be. "I know you didn't mean it. But I've learned," she said slowly, "that intention and impact are two different things. And I spent a lot of years confusing them." She looked at me. "I told myself I was treating you and Dominic equally. I told myself you were fine because you seemed fine. I didn't ask whether the reason you seemed fine was because you'd learned to stop expecting things." I looked at my mother. 60 years old, careful and a little uncertain, sitting across from the daughter she'd underestimated for 3 decades and trying, in the way that late attempts can be genuine without being sufficient, to begin again. "I appreciate you saying that," I said. "Really?" "It's not enough," she said. "I know it's not enough." "No," I said. "But it's a start." We stayed at the table for 3 hours. When we said goodnight on the pavement outside, she held me for a moment and said, "I'm proud of you. I should have been saying it all along. But I'm saying it now." I thought about 31 years of waiting. About 3 years of stopping the wait and building something real. About a career, a partnership, a keynote speech, a dog named Franklin, an apartment full of good light, a life that didn't have an empty space in it anymore. About a grandmother's carnations, and the things that survive because someone decides to see them. "I know, Mom," I said. I got in my car. I drove home. My mother and I have dinner every month now. Not every dinner is easy. Some of them are. Some of them are tentative and careful in the way of things still in the process of becoming. But she asks real questions now and listens to real answers, and she has not once in 6 months of dinners looked past me at something more interesting. That sounds like a small thing. It isn't. My father has been slower. He calls occasionally, careful in the way he's always been careful with me, but the calls are longer now and less perfunctory. He asked about the Ohio project last month in a way that suggested he'd actually read the articles. He said my name with something I'm still learning to recognize as pride. "Dominic and I are finding our way towards something that might, in time, become a real sibling relationship rather than the parallel lives we've always lived." He texted me when the partnership was announced. Rosa must have told him, and the text said, "I always knew you were the more impressive one. I just never said it. I'm saying it now." Kept that text. It's not everything. But it's real. Rosa was at the partnership dinner my firm threw. Front row, so to speak, the table closest to where I made my remarks. She was wearing the earrings she'd bought for my college graduation, which I recognized and which made my throat tighten. She caught me looking and touched one earring and smiled. I smiled back. Some people show up. They show up every time for 32 years without being asked, without anyone organizing them, without any certainty that what they're bringing will be received. They just show up because they've decided you matter, and that decision is non-negotiable. I am the person I am partly because of the family that fell short. I am the person I am mostly because of the woman who sat in the front row at a piano recital in 1999 and bought me carnations and recorded the whole thing on a borrowed camcorder so I would have proof that someone had seen me. I never forgot it. I never will. Last spring I gave a talk to a group of graduate students at my alma mater. Not a keynote, something smaller, more intimate. A career talk for students in the urban planning program, the kind of thing practitioners go back and do because someone went back and did it for them once. After the talk, a young woman came to find me. She was maybe 24, quietly dressed, with the particular look of someone who is very good at what she does and uncertain whether the world has noticed yet. She asked me a question that I've been asked in different forms many times. What do you do when you're working in an environment where you feel invisible? I thought about how to answer it honestly. You keep the receipts, I said. She looked at me. Not for revenge, I said. For yourself. You keep evidence of what you've actually done. The projects you led, the outcomes you produced, the work that was real and good. Not to prove it to anyone else. To prove it to yourself on the days when the environment makes you doubt it. She nodded slowly. And then, she said. And then you build toward the environment that deserves you, I said. Not the one you're in. The one that's possible. Because the one that deserves you exists. Sometimes you have to build it yourself, but it exists. She wrote something in her notebook. I looked at her. This young woman with her whole career in front of her, trying to figure out how to be seen in a world that doesn't always look. Also, I said, find your Rosa. Pi Rosa. The person who shows up, I said. Who sits in the front row? who asks the actual question and listens to the actual answer. Find that person and hold on to them. They are worth more than any amount of recognition from people who aren't paying attention. She smiled. I thought about carnations in a glass of water. About 43 photographs in a shoebox. About a woman with dark red hair holding a picture book in a classroom, grinning like someone who expected her life to be long. About all the people who reach into fires for the people they love. About the life you build when you finally stop bending yourself into shapes that fit other people's frames and start standing up in your own. I drove home through spring traffic with the windows down. Franklin was asleep on the couch when I got in. The apartment was full of good light, the late afternoon kind, the honest kind. My mother had called that morning to confirm our dinner next week. I had a partnership and a keynote under my belt and a graduate student who had written something in her notebook and a dog on my couch. I had a life. Completely, fully, irrevocably mine. That was everything. If you have ever sat at the wrong table at an event you organized. If you have ever heard your name used as a comparison and found yourself on the lesser side of it. If you have ever been told, in words or in silences or in the particular way a room's attention moved away from you, that you were the acceptable sacrifice, the capable one, the one who didn't need as much, I want to say something to you directly. You are not required to keep showing up to rooms where you are made small. Not dramatically. Not with a declaration or a confrontation designed to force understanding that isn't ready to come. Just you are not required. You are allowed to quietly, with dignity, stop bending yourself into shapes that fit other people's convenience and start standing up in your own. It will feel strange at first. The habit of shrinking is a deep one. The muscle memory of making yourself acceptable will not release all at once. But here's what I know from the other side of it. When you stop directing your energy toward being seen by people who aren't looking, you discover how much energy you actually have. You discover what you're capable of when you're not spending half your capacity on the hope that this time they'll notice. You discover that the life you were trying to earn their recognition for is actually worth building for its own sake. And sometimes, not always but sometimes, the people who weren't looking will eventually turn around. They will see what you built while they were looking elsewhere. And it will mean something real to them finally in the way it couldn't before. You can decide then on your own terms with your own life full and standing whether to let them in. Not from need. Not from hope. From choice. That's what it feels like when the balance shifts. Not because they finally gave you what you needed. Because you stopped needing them to. Thank you for being here until the very end. If this story moved you, please like this video. It genuinely helps more people find these stories. Subscribe with the notification bell if you haven't already. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to walk away from something that should have been yours? Have you ever had to build what you deserved instead of waiting to receive it? I read every single comment. Every one. Until next time, stand up in your own shape. Fits better than you think.